may be said that the gospel is at war with art. It is more accurate to say that it is fallen man's art that is the gospel, and for that matter with God himself, because man, as a result of the fall, always desires and continues to desire to be God. However, before we can even discuss art, which is a very subjective, or at least it seems to be an objective topic, we have to ask the question, what is art? How do we define art? What makes art good? What are its components? And is there anything that can be defined as bad art? Are we able to define bad art? More importantly, and I think this is what is really the crux of the matter, is what does God say about art? What does he have to say, if he has to say anything about art? What does he say about art? Well, in the opening statement of Genesis chapter 1, God is characterized as the master artist, creating the world for the express purpose of declaring his glory to the inhabitants of his creation. The psalmist himself confirms this in Psalm 19, that the heavens declare the glory of God and the firmament showeth his handiwork, his artistic handiwork, displayed for all to witness is God's creative visual imagery, and it is intended to elicit a response from the viewer as an example of what good artistic imagery is, of what good art is. The creation of the world itself and all that there is in is God's artistic declaration of what is good. This is what the master artist has communicated to those created in his image. This is God's artistic handiwork. And you can see the coloring, the value, the symmetry. And so, art can be defined as the creative visual expression of the artist in order to communicate something to the viewer, because that's what art is. It's a communicative venue. Art, therefore, is the philosophical expression of the artist's theological presupposition about how he or she sees the world. And simply put, art is the artist's visual world and life view. So whenever you see a piece of art, it is the artist showing you, this is what I believe. This is my world view, my world and life view. When God created Adam in his image and likeness, which was his finest creative act, he intended Adam to cultivate the world in harmony with God's goodness and God's beauty. Since God's creation was intended to communicate the divine knowledge, and again, remember, this is what is being communicated. God was intending Adam to communicate the divine knowledge of God's glory. As God's human representative, Adam was to communicate that knowledge in everything that he did, and that included his artistic creation. Notice what it says. The heavens declared the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Notice, day unto day uttereth speech, a communication, and night unto night showeth the knowledge of God, the knowledge of God's beauty. Their line has gone forth throughout all the world. In other words, God's artistic expression is being catapulted into the world. Adam was commissioned originally, before his fall, Adam was commissioned to preserve Eden's beauty so that it would reflect the knowledge of God. He was to subdue any attempt to pervert God's world, which included its beauty, its original beauty. And by doing so, Adam was to take godly dominion over it, all for the glory of God. But that all ended when God rebelled and plunged the world into depravity and darkness. Mankind, at that point in time, mankind and his achievements were now changed forever. And God saw the wickedness of man that was upon the earth, and it repented God that he ever even created man, because of the depth of the depravity and the debauchery that man had become and would create out of that mass of wickedness and evil. And so for us, the question is, what are the components, if there are any, what are the guidelines, if there are any, for good art? Another question is, does the Scripture speak to this? In other words, how are we to discern? And, we live in the art world all day long. Every day of our lives, we are contemplating artistic creations, whether you know it or not. The tables you sit at is a creative act. So how are we to discern what is good and what is not in the realm of the art world? Certainly, God calls us to be discerning in every element of our civilization, in every element of life, and art is probably one of the most difficult areas to navigate. Because you might say, oh, that's a nice piece, and you might say, that's a piece of junk. Same piece. So since artistic talent is a gift given directly from the goodness of God, it fundamentally belongs to God. It is on loan from God. The artist simply has been given stewardship over that gift. And therefore, because it's belonging to God and it's a stewardship given to man, the artist has to use it in accordance with God's model of what good art is. As image bearers of God, mankind is to honor him in all that they do. As my wife has rightly stated in her book, Art, A Biblical Definition and Purpose, this is the measure of a true artist, that artist would then show forth in their creation what is good, what is reflective of God, to communicate the glory and the beauty of God in a visual piece or in an architectural piece or in a sculpture. The creative ability of man was never intended for him to express himself. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about God. And God has given that talent to man in order to glorify him with that ability in which he had been given. So, what makes art good in the sight of God? Or to put it another way, what should the Christian artist, when I speak about Christian artist and I speak about Christian art, I'm not talking about Jesus with a halo and angels in the architecture. That's not what I'm talking about. So what should the Christian artist use as guideposts or pathways to create good art? In other words, art that is well-pleasing to God as well as the viewer. Well, God gives these directives. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, pure, of a good report, virtuous, and worthy of praise. Worthy of praise. A visual image that is worthy of praise. This is good art. In fact, this is the work of one of our artists at our Xposition art gallery. In fact, her art, very interestingly, her art expresses biblical themes There's hidden messages, parabolic symbology in these artistic pieces. This is good art. This is talent. And it's communicating something to the viewer. And of course, this is good art too, from some of the masters, communicating things which you can relate to. This is also good art. Some of the masters, things that you can relate to, done well. You see the skill, the talent, the colors. And now, for some bad art, even some that is overtly reprehensible. This artist here has perverted the image of God in man by painting something grotesque and unrecognizable. Now, I have to admit, while this may be a representation of man, what he has become, it is not what man ought to be. And what is it actually communicating? Okay, so where in this painting can we see beauty or truth or honesty or virtue or anything of redeeming value other than an expression of confusion? And of course, this individual here understands exactly what this piece of art is. It's utter confusion. Now, you may like this piece of art, but does it show forth the glory of God? And then we have stupid art. This is stupid art. And yet this art has sold for millions. Bought by stupid people who are void of any concept of beauty whatsoever. And then finally, of course, the coup de grace, we have blasphemous art. This is an all-out declaration of the war on God and the gospel of the kingdom. This is not art. This is rather a vomitous outpouring of a depraved mind. Here we have a crucifix submerged in a glass of urine, human urine. This is supposedly Mary, the mother of Jesus, and that's cow dung sprayed all upon her. Millions of dollars, tax funded. This is not good art. It's not even bad art. It's vomitous art. And yet these paintings dominate the art world because the Christian community has failed to recognize the importance of art as it relates to the glory of God. We've allowed them to hijack the beauty of God. Okay, so I'm a tactical thinker. What do? How do we redeem what has been stolen from us because while good men slept, the enemy sowed these tares? So what are we to do? Well, first, get your fellow Christians interested and involved in art. Now, you may say, well, I'm not an artist. It doesn't matter if you're not an artist or you are an artist. It doesn't really matter. Get your church interested in art. Perhaps they can display good art to beautify the foyer or the classrooms or even their bathrooms. Educate your community as to what good art looks like. You know, my wife and I, sometimes we go to art galleries a lot, and we're looking at art, and my wife, she contemplates me. I just want to, go to the next picture, of course. And I say to her, c'est merde. You know what that is in French? It's junk. It's no good. And yet, hundreds and thousands of dollars for those pieces of art. So, encourage good art. Support good artists and good art galleries. Visit art galleries, even if you say, well, I'm not really into it. It doesn't matter. See what's out there. Begin to think critically. Visit them. Talk with the curators. Engage the art world. Now, my wife and I were so committed to this area of God's world that we launched our own Christian art gallery, funded completely by donors committed to the beauty of God, of God's beauty in art. We took the ugliest building in the county of Appomattox and we renovated it through donors. No banks, but through donors who had a vision for God's beauty. After we renovated the first ugliest building in Appomattox, our church, then we renovated another building. And we took ugliness and made it beautiful. And here you see, this is one of the opening exhibitions. Encourage art. Because art is a powerful tool. And that power was given to us in order to use for God's glory and the restoration of God's beauty in a lost and fallen world. We must do this for the praise and the glory of God. Notice, let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands, establish thou it, for thou also hast wrought all our works in us. We need to start being more proactive in every area of civilization that is known to man, and we need to go on the offensive. We talk about the gospel of war, the vengeance of God. It is our moment against heresies, against the wicked state, against the debauchery of the art world. May God be pleased to empower us. You know, it's interesting when you ask little children, you have a bunch of little children, say, any of you an artist? Everyone who raises their hand. And when you get a little older, more self-conscious, who's an artist here? And they're going, I can't do it. I can't even draw stick figures. It's time to take back what has been stolen from us, and we begin today. God bless you.